All right. So on tonight's installment of the Philosophical Concepts, I don't know if that's the title we're going to go with for this series, but tonight we are going to talk about Hanlon's razor. This should be a pretty short video, so let's get right to the point. What is Hanlon's razor? Hanlon's razor is a heuristic guideline that suggests that you should not attribute to malice what you can easily attribute to incompetence. So I guess there's really not much to extrapolate from that. But when it's most commonly applied is looking at somebody's intentions. So it's entirely possible for a guy who's working for you to screw up on the job. Is that because he's trying to burn you as an employer, or is that because he's incompetent? The reason that it's useful to apply this standard is, and this is a natural segue from our last topic, which was the principle of charity, is because it gets to somebody's intentions. It gives somebody the ground. You're giving somebody basically the rope to hang themselves with. If you assume the best of intentions and just attribute to their malformities a degree of incompetence rather than a degree of malfeasance, what you wind up getting is a situation where you've basically lended them an escape route. So if this is somebody that we're talking about who is an actually bad person, your response to somebody who has simply made an error, somebody who is lacking competence, if you treat them as though they've lacked competence, generally speaking, the resolutions you'll come up with are resolutions that will be less combative and will be more healthy in terms of establishing that relationship. And then if they are actually malfeasant actors, after you've done that, treated them as just simply incompetent and done the things to resolve their competence, the only thing you'll be left with is whether or not they are a malicious actor. So in the case of public policy, there's a lot of places to apply that. I'll give you one right off the bat that's incredibly innocuous, and I'll start with my own experience. So I had a client when I was working at a local cemetery. I was the superintendent, head groundskeeper, so I was actually running the cemetery, who was angry because one of my guys, when they were weed whacking, accidentally weed whacked one of her flowers. So let's look at her perspective. Let's look at my perspective. There's an easy way for her to have applied Hanlon's razor. She sees the flowers that got weed whacked. Now, they're not in a bed. There's no edging on the bed. It's just dug up a section of the grass, put in some flowers. No problem. But the way she could attribute malice to us, which is that we deliberately weed whack her flowers because we don't like her. Or she could say that we were careless. Or she could take Hanlon's razor to its logical extreme and say, this is a giant cemetery. There's only 3 guys here. And what it would take for us to properly trim the grass and also perfectly avoid getting everybody's flowers caught up in this means basically taking out a pair of pinking shears, a pair of scissors, and going through 84 acres of cemetery and 10,000 stones every week because get this grass grows. And for 3 guys to do that is just a completely unreasonable ask. And I think anyone would agree with that, including in this case, the client. She was irate, and she accused us, of course, of the most nefarious take, that you guys willfully destroyed her flowers on purpose because we're, say, schmucks of some sort. So there's a way that I could respond to that. And it could be that I attribute to her that she's just insert various swear words here, insert various dirty names I could call her here. The truth is I actually know this person now. And she's somebody who lives on my block, and I kind of knew her secondarily throughout my course of life before this incident happened. I could say, listen, maybe this isn't somebody who is willing to herself apply Hanlon's razor. Maybe this is somebody who, from a debate standpoint, from a philosophical standpoint, isn't as competent as, say, somebody who understands and can apply Hanlon's razor. Maybe this is somebody who, probably is going to jump to conclusions because she's in a cemetery mourning her dead father, right? Like maybe there's some sort of emotional bond associated with that in some respects causes people to act illogically. Well, I won't say unreasonably, but let's say illogically. Okay, fine. So I could blow up at her and interpret her as accusing me of all of these things that, is undue and disrespectful. Or I can say, Ma'am, uh, our genuine apologies. I'll deal with this in house. We'll try to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And then there's a one step further. Do I talk to my employee? What do I say with my employee? Right? Because if I'm not lying to the client, I need to at least talk to, let's call him Charles. No, let's go with something more. Let's call him Mark. Okay. Mark, I got to fire you for this. We can't have you being this negligent. We can't have you, more extreme, deliberately destroying people's flowers. Or do I take the more relaxed perspective and say, you know what? This is an 84-acre cemetery. And sometimes when we use weed whackers, we accidentally get flowers. So in this case, I would tell the fellow Mark, try to be more careful and be aware that at that gravesite, you got to be extra careful every once in a while because this person is going to chew us out. I'm not going to attribute any bad characteristics to her, but she's going to chew us out. And honestly, she'll probably sleep on this and then apologize. And that's exactly what happened. So by giving her the rope to hang herself with, right, by attributing incompetence rather than malfeasance or maliciousness, I give her the rope to hang herself with. And debate, this is a perfect tactic to use to somebody when you don't know their intentions, right? And what you do is when you attribute incompetence in, say, a debate platform or in, say, a political discussion, you explain to them why it is that they're incorrect, on what basis it is that you would say this sort of thing, right? So if somebody says something that is incorrect, you correct them, right? You don't jump down their throats and say, you're an evil person. You correct the actual inaccuracy because of their lack of competence. Then the only response they have is to actually engage the debate on the merits of the argument or to reveal their true character as a bad person. So it helps to build healthy dialogue, and it will actually help you in certain cases if you want to, say, win a debate. Here's another example, because we're going to touch up on some hot button topics, where we can look to somebody's intentions by applying Hanlon's razor. Let's talk about the wall. I know. Nobody wants to talk about the wall. So here's how you could take Donald Trump's, let's say you get two people who both agree that the wall is a bad idea. One person sees Donald Trump's wall with Mexico and says, what are his intentions? Why does he want to build a wall? Well, because he's a racist xenophobe, even though Mexico isn't a race, but let's say he's a racist xenophobe. Or is it because his intention is to stymie illegal immigration, and there's a real reason to stymie illegal immigration of all kinds, and he believes that building this wall in the manner that it's going to manifest, for the price that it's going to cost, is going to be worth the effort and is going to reduce the type of illegal immigration that we're looking to reduce, at least in the short term, to address a greater problem. Perhaps that second person takes that perspective and says, no, I agree with you. The wall shouldn't be built because we're going to have to build a 2,000-mile long Death Star in order to have any effect at all on the actual illegal immigration that we're talking about here. And we're going to have, thousands of men basically stationed, armed guards basically stationed at gun towers every 100 yards with a 12-foot thick concrete barrier that's going to have to go 30 feet into the ground and 50 feet in the air and then be surrounded by barbed wire with spotlights everywhere. And we're going to have to slash and burn all kinds of wood. We're going to have to go through the mountains in Mexico, or New Mexico and Arizona and into California. Yeah, this is going to be a colossal expense and it's not going to be worth the cost. So in one case, one person has given Donald Trump the rope to hang himself with. Don, I agree that there might be some reason to stymie illegal immigration, but this wall isn't going to do what I think it's going to do. Then he has to engage on the merits. Otherwise, he's going to the other way to argue then on that is to argue from a xenophobic or overtly racist fashion. In that case, he's shown his true colors. In that case, you've won the debate because you basically have shown him to be the bad person in that debate. And that's a position that nobody's going to agree with. But if you just immediately jump out and say racist, what do you think Donald Trump's going to respond with? Fake news. So do you see how if you apply Hanlon's razor in that situation, not only does it lead to an argument on the actual arguments, a debate on the actual arguments, it allows you to actually to be the better person. And you don't have to apply this to political conversations. You can look at it with your friends. Why did somebody shortchange you, right? Why did your friend not pay the chip in for the electric bill this month? Is it because he forgot? Or is it because he's a jerk and he's trying to stiff you? How is that going to help your relationship? If he's actually a jerk, then you give himself the rope to hang himself with. And then he reveals himself to be a jerk. And then you're totally justified in severing that relationship. Well, I mean, there are cases where it doesn't matter because the thing itself is not worthy of looking into the intentions. Say, like, if your wife cheats on you or if your husband cheats on you. I don't care why you did it. It's just not my thing. We're done, right? So that's a case where Hanlon's razor doesn't come into play because you're not looking to somebody's intentions. There's other places where it applies, but let's leave it as simple as it's mostly used for looking at somebody's intentions. Now, again, like we said in other topics, and we're going to wrap up here because we're getting a little bit long here, but this is just a heuristic guideline. And I have been the guy that's been accused of taking Hanlon's razor too far. There is such a thing as being naive, and you shouldn't be naive. And there are going to be cases where it's going to be very difficult for me to apply Hanlon's razor. There are people in my hometown whose politics I disagree with tremendously, but I don't attribute to them malice. I don't consider them bad people. In many cases, I just consider them incorrect. There is a certain person in this town that, in confidence, I've described as being a loon bin. And she really is loony. And in that case, I can't attribute malice. She's just crazy, right? I'm not going to jump down that person's throat. I'm not going to call her names behind her back if she's just crazy. When she posts insane stuff on Facebook, I'm not going to really respond to it too much. Now, I might respond to the people in the comments section if there seems to be a general misunderstanding of the topics. And of course, I'm going to try to do that response while applying Hanlon's razor. And there are a lot of people that have said to me, there are folks in town that you should not be associating with because they're bad people. And I say, yeah, we may disagree on politics, but I don't think the reason we disagree on politics is because they're a bad person. There is such a thing as just simply being incompetent. So hopefully that has explained what Hanlon's razor is. Hopefully you can now apply that in your daily life. And hopefully you can understand where it ought to be used and when people, are using it and aren't. So that's been Hanlon's razor. I'm not sure what our next topic is going to be, but it's probably going to be something I've actually come up with. And I'll leave a little bit of a cliffhanger by simply saying, if you guys have had the time to look into it, at some point we are going to talk about some of my topics, which will lead with the plane crash effect. So until we get to that point, this has been Mike signing off. Good night, everybody.